She used me, humiliated others, and thought she'd never face consequences. But she underestimated how far a quiet kid like me would go, especially when I had the power of timing, silence, and a little rain. If you've ever had someone act sweet only when they need something, and cruel the moment they don't, you're going to feel this one deep in your soul. Hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready for one of the most satisfying slow-burn revenge stories you've heard today. The girl who was nice only when it benefited her. High school can feel like a never-ending social minefield, especially when you're one of the quiet ones. I was never the loudest or most popular kid in class. But I wasn't invisible either. Well, unless it was convenient for someone else. There was this girl, let's call her Tina. Tina had this weird ability to shapeshift her personality depending on who she was talking to. If she needed help with homework, suddenly I was her best friend. If she forgot her pencil, "Oh hey," she'd say with a fake grin and puppy eyes. "You're always so prepared. Can I borrow one?" But the moment her need was fulfilled, poof, she'd pretend I didn't exist. I'd pass her in the hallway the very next day and she wouldn't even make eye contact. She acted like I was invisible unless she needed something. Then suddenly I was useful, important, even likable. And it wasn't just me. She treated people like tools in a toolbox. Use them, then shelve them. But then came the moment that broke something inside me, and it didn't even happen to me directly. Casual cruelty, and the racist comment. One afternoon, we were sitting in class. It had just rained. The smell of wet notebooks and damp sweaters lingered in the air. Tina was laughing with a few other kids, loud enough for the teacher to sigh but not loud enough to scold. Then, she turned to a quiet boy in our class. Let's call him Kevin. Kevin was smart, polite, a little shy. He also happened to be Asian. And Tina, in that high-pitched, sarcastic tone she loved to use, said, "Just because you look Asian doesn't mean you're smart, you know." The whole class froze for a second. Kevin blinked. His face tightened. But he didn't say a word. He just slowly packed his books and moved to another seat, like he was used to it. Like it wasn't even worth fighting. I don't know why, but that moment stuck with me. It made my stomach twist. I could almost feel the sting behind his silence, the kind of pain that doesn't show up in loud arguments but in quiet departures. And Tina, she giggled, like she had just cracked the world's funniest joke. That was the moment I realized something. Tina would never change. She didn't care about kindness, decency, or fairness. But maybe she could learn what it felt like to be ignored. To feel uncomfortable, confused. Not in a huge, dramatic way. Just, consistently, quietly, relentlessly. So I started plotting. A rainy payback. I had a reputation in school, one that I'd unintentionally built over the years. I was always the first student in the classroom. Always early. Always prepared. That meant I had control of the seating arrangement before anyone else got there. And I knew exactly where Tina liked to sit, right next to the door. Prime spot. Easy in, easy out. It was also the spot most vulnerable when it rained. One morning, it was absolutely pouring. I stood outside the classroom, umbrella in hand, waiting. Watching the puddles gather. Then I stepped in, drip drip drip, but instead of closing my umbrella, I angled it just enough to let the rainwater cascade down the edge, right onto Tina's favorite seat. I moved to my own seat, calm as ever, pretending to read. She walked in a few minutes later, chatting with a friend. Then she stopped. Why is this wet?" I shrugged. "Must have been the rain." She looked around confused, irritated. But with the classroom nearly full, she had to take a different seat. Further back. Less ideal. The next time it rained, I did it again. Only this time, I had perfected the technique. I even brought a larger umbrella, letting more water slide down its edge before I casually tilted it over her desk. It became a tradition, my secret ritual. Rain equals wet seat for Tina. She never figured it out. She'd walk in, confused, frustrated, muttering about the leak in the roof or how this school sucks. Every time, I'd watch the slight furrow of her brows, the flicker of confusion in her eyes. She was so used to being in control, so sure of her status, and now something tiny and unexplainable was chipping away at her comfort. And I sat quietly in the front row, just another invisible kid, blending in. But inside I was laughing. Climactic revenge payoff, the emotional victory. There was one particular day I remember more than any other. It had been raining for hours. The whole school was damp and cranky. Tina walked in, hair frizzed, already annoyed. She saw her seat, soaked again, and her expression cracked. She stomped over to the teacher, demanding to know why no one is doing anything about this stupid leak. The teacher looked up from her desk, clearly having heard this complaint before. She looked at me, just for a moment, and then said, "Maybe try a different seat, Tina. Sometimes life gets a little wet." I almost burst out laughing. That was the day I knew my revenge had worked. Not because she was destroyed. Not because she cried. But because I had quietly chipped away at the one thing she thought no one could touch. Her comfort. Her confidence. Her control. Looking back now, part of me wishes I had gone further. Stepped in with muddy shoes and left footprints on that seat. But maybe the quiet kind of justice is even better. Sometimes, the most satisfying revenge doesn't come from grand gestures, but from the small, calculated drips that slowly remind someone they're not untouchable. If that story hit close to home, go ahead and smash that like button. And tell us in the comments, what's the pettiest but most satisfying revenge you've ever seen? Subscribe for more slow burn justice stories, because karma might not always be loud, but it's always listening.